What's up, everyone? For everyone listening on YouTube, we're going to get started here in just a second. All right, guys, now we good. Oh, I got someone in the chat. What's up, brother? If anyone else is on YouTube and wants to say hello, please go for it. Hopefully, we can transition away from. Well, I'm not going to transition totally away from Kick, but I'll let you guys know what my plans are there. So, but before we talk about that, let's see who's in the chat. Yo, what's up, Amos? I know, I know who you are. What's up, dude? Awesome. All right, let's see who hops on. Hopefully YouTube is more convenient than hopefully the stream is more convenient than Kick. But let's see how's it going. We follow each other since Bowden days, big bro. What's up, dude? Nice. It's nice. Do you guys prefer YouTube? I'm guessing. I currently have John Deere tractor. I was thinking of selling it for some more Bitcoin due to it sitting in my barn on the farm. Yeah, should I do it? Yeah, I mean, look, man, it's not a good season to plant crops, so may as well put that tractor to better use, uh, being long the future of the world currencies. Came to show some support and love. Hell yeah, let's go. All right, we'll get started here in just a second. Got a lot to talk about. I was hoping with YouTube it's easier for people to watch it too, because I know like Kick, if you're on mobile, probably a pain in the ass. YouTube, you can also go and watch the videos easily. Like, it's just such a better platform in general. The only thing with YouTube is like, if I ever wanted to run, let's say, like a challenge account or something, like I wouldn't be able to do it on YouTube because of their rules. EA like last weekend, but even more feels even more nasty. Not gonna lie. Is the bull market over? Did I screw up by not shorting the top? Okay, yeah. I mean, we're gonna talk about all of that. I don't think the bull market's over. I think this is just like personally, I think we're in like a super trend, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And essentially, what you're gonna see is like the bigger the craziness that happens, the more like quote unquote time the super trend could chop before you get another leg up. So that's sort of what I think is going on. Let's see. My first time doing this on YouTube, so I'm like trying to figure out what's going on in the back end and whatnot. So, all right, nice. All right, we'll give it another minute and then I'll get going on the markets. I have a couple different tabs open, a couple different data points I want to go over, and yeah. Yo, what's up, Brian? I don't know, Brian? No, Brian Esquivel. What's up, brother? All right, let's get started on the markets. People can hop in. If people have questions, post them in the chat as usual. Gonna gonna go over everything. I think. Well, let's talk a little bit about markets. And we dumped here about a month ago. I'm gonna turn off all these indicators. Honestly, the only indicator I use nowadays is volume, but even that I don't. Sometimes I just like to just look at the chart without anything. So let's just recap sort of what's happened, which is you had like crazy treasury buying, crazy top blasting, whatever that happened. Then the market broke down. You flushed out a lot of the froth out of the market. Okay, cool. And we've been sort of climbing and chopping, right? So number three. What does the number three mean? It's like top fans or something. Going well, trying to get a read on these markets with everyone else. Maybe we go up to that 50-week SMA. I mean, I don't really use SMAs. What is it? Where is the 50-week SMA? Let's take a look. I'll sort of give my thoughts here, though. I am curious where this level is, but it's around 102. I mean, in terms of like natural resistance, it's such a natural resistance point, like coming off all these like candles. But I don't know necessarily if we get there right away. I guess let me give my thoughts here on the markets. So, and sorry if I'm switching tabs and doing all this crap. It's because I'm new to YouTube, so I'm trying to figure out how all this works here. So let's talk a little bit about markets. So we dumped. Clearly, we bottomed here. The next day we tried to have a sell-off. Basically got auto bought up. Then we had these moves above 90. We get dumped out. Move above 90. Get dumped out. And then, we've had this chop. I guess I'll talk a little bit about some of my observations and then sort of more of my overall like zoomed out view. So from a macro or like long-term perspective, so let's just zoom out first. I don't think anything's wrong with the market, and I'll come back to this sort of near the end of my stream as well. I don't think anything is wrong with the market. A lot of people panicking. Look, the reality is like the longer this goes on, the more you're going to get like speculative behavior that gets a little bit crazy, and the more you're going to get like higher volatility as a result, right? Like when you have treasuries raising tens of billions of dollars to buy Bitcoin, and then that bid evaporates, like, okay, a 30% drop, it's not that crazy, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, like I think the trend is intact, like very zoomed out. The trend has been up, up, up. And based on sort of how crazy the moves have been, the volatility has been like proportionate, right? So I don't think there's anything to worry about. I mean, I see a lot of people panicking and whatnot. Like, Bitcoin bottomed at around 80. It's still at 88.5. It's not like we're sitting at like 72K or 65K. So let's just zoom in and talk about this range. I will say there's a couple things I've noticed. One is, and I'm going to go over like order books and lick maps and all that fun stuff as well. So the first thing is I've noticed Bitcoin hasn't really been able to stay above 93K. And that could just be because you have people who are like selling the yearly open, right? If you look at where the yearly open was, I think it was around, let's see, is there a yearly open thing? Oops. Yearly open levels, let's try that. Yeah, it's like literally the yearly open, right? So you could easily have people that are basically selling the yearly open. I think that at this time of the year, you're going to have a lot of people like tax selling as well. The reality is, Bitcoin has been trading above this level unless you bought basically like late Feb to early April. So like if you bought Bitcoin anytime except like a 2 or 3 month period out of the year, so like the last 8 or 9 months, you can just sell and do tax harvesting, right? So you might be getting some of these apes that are like, okay, I'm going to sell yearly open. It might also just be that, demand is going to take time to form, right? So you're not going to have apes going crazy to buy Bitcoin above like 93 right now, which is fine. Like, you don't need breakout buyers at every stage of the market, right? Like, when you look at last summer, Bitcoin like really didn't want to trade above 70 for very long. Like, initially it could sort of hold 70 more so. Then like, we would briefly get above 70 but auto reject, right? So like at first 70 was sort of like distribution, but there was a lot of demand, right? Then like we get up there but it gets distributed quickly. Then like we can't even break 70. And then like you have a couple times where you reject way off 70, right? But then it doesn't mean that 70 is not going to get broken. It just means like you might have this extended process where like you get some resistance and whatnot initially. Like, again, same thing if you look sort of like what happened last summer. Like, we couldn't really hold above 88 for very long. Like, not last summer, like February, March, April. Initially, we could get above 88, right? But realistically, like, we couldn't really hold above 88 for very long. But then eventually we broke 88, right? So my point being, like, we're sort of in this process where sellers, like late sellers, are probably going to find coins to sell, which is fine. But the question is, like, is the bottom going to drop out and is the market going to go way lower? And I'll show you some data, which I think the answer to that is no. So here, let's see. What do you think about the 4-year cycle? I don't think the 4-year cycle matters. I think we're in a new paradigm, and I have great evidence for that, right? The ETFs, right? The ETFs. Look, this is like, anytime you want to be like bearish on Bitcoin, just go back to this chart. Like, especially times like this where price is down and it's not really going up, it's kind of just chopping around. Like, just go to this chart and let's see, how long is it? I'm trying to figure out also how the latency is between YouTube and my screen. I think it's like significantly longer than it was on Kick, but that's fine. So look, close to 60 billion has come into the market, right? This money is not going to go away. So at some point it's going to get to 80, at some point it's going to get to 100, at some point it's going to get to 120. That's why I said I think like the larger trend is intact. That doesn't mean you can't have cool-off periods where money doesn't really go in, things kind of go sideways, people find reasons to sell. That's totally fine. But I think like from the perspective of 4-year cycles, I think this chart like basically tells you the 4-year cycle thesis is like, over. Understandable if we flush. What if we flushed 74? Would that confirm trend change? I don't think so. I think it's possible to get another flush, but I don't think it confirms any sort of trend change. Well, demand is so high on gold and QQQ, but no one wants Bitcoin. Again, like, this is where Bitcoin's different than like a gold or a NASDAQ, right? Like, NASDAQ trades so mechanically. You don't see the NASDAQ go up 10% in a day, right? So that's why I think, like, don't be too gung-ho, like, oh, the NASDAQ's up, gold's up, like, whatever. Like, Bitcoin will go on these massive spurts. And that's where a lot of people get sort of hung up, is like, well, NASDAQ's doing this, Bitcoin should be following. Like, no, like, there was periods where Bitcoin went from 50K to 74K in like 2 weeks, right? Like a 50% move. There's other periods, again, Bitcoin went from 66 to 108 in like a month, right? Or whatever it was. So don't get too gung-ho about, oh my God, like Bitcoin is dumping or NASDAQ's up, Bitcoin's not up. Like this market trades more so in terms of, Bitcoin trades much more so in terms of impulses and supply and demand shocks than it does like, what am I trying to say here? It trades much more so in terms of like demand and like these sort of like spikes in demand rather than continuous demand, like the NASDAQ. Okay, so what's going on here? Like low time frame, there's some things I noticed. I talked about this in one of my streams before. You start seeing patterns like this, like very low time frame, where you get these sort of like just like distributions where it's down only, it's a little bit concerning. It sort of tells you like demand might be dry here, which is what I was saying above 93. I also noticed this, which was these lower high wicks. Again, not like the greatest of signs, but you saw this sort of stuff like, back in like February, March. I remember seeing this in like February, March, let's go there actually. Like, you had like 6 attempts to break 88 or whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, like again, another one here, like 5. And you had this like droopy price action and the market went down, right? But like, again, same thing here, like droopy, 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 droopy. And then you had sort of like this, for the lack of a better word, I don't know what you call this, like lack of volume and then sort of a breakdown. But then the market like rebounded. It kind of, what we saw like this weekend really reminded me of that actually, where like the market went down and then like we had these lower highs, you get this droopy price action and then it sort of takes a dive. I'm not too worried. So let's go over lick maps, let's go over open interest, let's go over all this fun stuff. So any thoughts on ETH? Okay. The ETH thing is like the funniest thing ever because people think that what's his name? Tom Lee buying is bearish. And I talked about ETH before, actually. If you look, I talked about ETH, like, actually, you can tell when I talked about it. It was like right here, right? It was around here. And I said, like, so I think people are really getting the ETH trade wrong. There's way too many ETH bears, especially ETH BTC. What's the reality? The reality is Tom Lee, and if anyone has that website, like Hypersound Money or something, let me take a look. I don't know if it was Hypersound. There was a website that showed you like how much ETH had been bought up by all these treasuries. I don't know. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I'm trying to find it on. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it. Strategic ETH Reserve.xyz. See if I can pull this up and bring it over. Okay. Let's talk about ETH. I think this is a great question, actually. If Trump ends up getting new Fed chairman and they lower rates to 1%, Bitcoin goes to 250K, does this cause another bear market like 2022? Yes. I think, I don't know if I'd say even bear market. You could get bigger gyrations. That's what I'd say, Amos. Like, I don't think you're going to see like 20K Bitcoin or whatever, but like, you could get a period where it's sideways for like a year. That even a year, maybe that's a little bit too long, but basically, the crazier the shit that happens, the more likely it is to get for us to get some sort of sideways price action. So, okay, let me pull this tab in. Strategic ETH reserves. People look at Bitmine buying ETH and they're like, "Oh my god, this is bearish, dude." These guys absorbed 3% of the supply. This is not bearish. Okay, I don't know what. And obviously, SBET absorbed some. I think SBET might have sold, but I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. 3.2%, right? Objectively, this supply's out of the market. So ETH, BTC, like, it's just like simple supply demand, right? When you take supply out of the market, the supply decreases, right? So the settling price for the same demand goes up, right? It's like basic economics, right? If you took an economics class at some point in your life, you learned this, right? So if Tom Lee's not going to sell ETH, so this is why I think like people are so misguided about ETH. And this is my analysis on it before. And I'll talk a little bit more about it right now. So, sorry, I'm just trying to read the chat as I'm doing this. I think like if Bitcoin went to 250, maybe it dumps to 80. Yeah, it's possible. Okay, so ETH sub 0.02 was like mass capitulation, mass leverage capitulation. Everything was capitulated, right? Then ETH sort of pumps a little bit. So this is like very undervalued, right? So I'm just going to draw a U, right? This is undervalued. Then Tom Lee comes in and he buys a shitload. And, maybe this is the clearing price for when you have like a crazy ape buying, right? So I wouldn't even call this overvalued. I would just call this like, I don't even know what I'd call it. Let's just say like Tom Lee's like clearing price, whatever. Like if supply is absorbed out of the market, ETH BTC should not get anywhere close to 0.018. The revenues don't matter. This is all supply and demand. The revenues don't matter whatsoever. So what do I mean by that? Like, could ETH BTC go to high 0.02s? Maybe, but like, I don't see a world where ETH goes to back to anywhere near these lows. I think there's a lot of supply that was absorbed. It's very possible this thing ranges, but I think actually when you look at ETH, like, as long as Tom Lee doesn't sell, actually the only thing that could happen is ETH going up, like ETH BTC going up specifically, because there's no supply and you're basically free rolling that more demand comes in at some point. So I don't think like being bearish ETH here makes any sense. Okay, let's look at some trading data. So realistically, like, let me talk about what I think Bitcoin could do, and then I'll go over the data. Do I think Bitcoin's going to break down? I think it's unlikely, actually. I think that this sort of trend is intact, right? This like trend of demand. Now, could you get some exogenous event or some craziness that causes us to break down? Like, what is the most I could see us going to is maybe like high 60s, low 70s. I think that's unlikely. I think it's possible, but it's very unlikely. So from that perspective, like, I think your risk reward here is like, I feel a little bit, and not exactly the same way, but a little bit like 2023 when Bitcoin went from like 32 to 26 and was sort of meandering, or like Bitcoin again went from 32 to 26 and was just sort of meandering. Like, you could also view it sort of as like the last summer where things sort of got droopy and Bitcoin sort of meandered in the mid 50s. Like, I'm not saying we can't go lower. It's possible, but I just think it's unlikely. And I think a lot of people have already gotten aped. Like, you could have local pockets of froth. And by the way, if people have questions, people want me to go over anything, just post it in the chat, because I am reading the chat. Like, could you get these local pockets of froth or whatever that get hunted? Sure, but like, I actually think this is like basically a homeostasis price for Bitcoin. And what I mean by that is, like, unless you get like a big seller to come out of the woodwork, which I don't know why they wouldn't have already, but like, yeah, maybe you get some tax sellers, or maybe you get some people that want to like lock in profits for their book. I don't see this market really breaking down. I think it's more likely we chop. Like, I would say realistically, we shouldn't even trade below 80, but it's possible we do. But I just don't even, like, I think sub 70 is like such a pipe dream. If you're looking for sub 70, like, I think it's quite a pipe dream, to be honest. Where did this chat go? Okay. Again, if people have questions, post in the chat. Happy to go over them. Okay, let's go over lick maps. Let's go over order books. Okay, lick maps. Yeah, there's like a pocket of big licks up to like 84, 85. So is it possible we go to 85? Or 84 or whatever? Yeah, it's possible. Like, let's look at the position actually. So this is what I recommend. Like, if you're using Hyperliquid and you want to see what some of these apes are doing, click. But like there's also shorts to liquidate if we go up, right? Like, there's not quite as much of a density on them, so I think it's more likely like you hunt to the downside. But by the way, when you see like, oh, the lick's 84 too, like, it's typically higher. So we can click on him and see, like, it's 84.5, right? This guy entered a bit ago. So yeah, it's like, all in all, like, very low time frame. Is it more likely we go down? Like, probably, yeah. But I don't see like systemic issues with the market, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, yeah, we could go down. Like, lick maps do look slightly bearish. What about order books? Okay, so let's look at order books. Okay, what's the main thing I'm looking at is interest rates. As long as you're in a regime where the Federal Reserve is lowering rates and the bull run will continue, the raising rates will enter a bear market. Yeah, and by the way, Amos, like, I don't know if you saw this, they're going to start printing 40 billion a month, right? Like, we are now basically like, we all know this is a banana republic. Like, everything, points to the fact that at the end of the day, the Fed would rather sacrifice the dollar, right? Let inflation run a little hot, do a little extra printing, keep things going, than hold rates super high and crash everything, right? So yeah, like, then this, so, but yeah, like, the Fed started raising rates and we started a bear market. Yeah, I mean, like, not only are they cutting rates, they're also printing, right? And they're not calling it printing, but you know, anyone with a brain cell says it's printing, right? So, did you have a total crypto market cap in mind for crypto in this bull run? I think I don't have a total. I don't have a total in mind. Arch enemy. A good question, but I don't have a total in mind. Again, if people have questions, feel free to post them. Happy to answer. By the way, if you're not subscribed, also, uh, any and all subscriptions would be very much appreciated. Um, let's talk about order books. So, order books, if you looked at them yesterday, were neutral, maybe slightly bearish. I don't see anything here that's telling me, like, if anything, like, we dumped to 88.5, and what was bearish on Binance, now you have, like, a big gap up to, like, 92, 93. And you also, like, if you just look at the bid side, right, this is a Binance spot. From 88 to 80, you have 3K BTC in bids. From 88 to 98, which is a larger price range and magnitude, you have 2K, right? Like, things are starting to get more bid heavy, which is why I think, like, the closer you get towards 80, the more, like, aggressive absorption you're going to get in this market. Because at the end of the day, like, sub 80, in my opinion, is probably actually, when you think about this in terms of, like, in a really zoomed out range, right? And we draw some sort of pseudo trend line. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm just going to draw, like, some sort of, like, best fit, like, off the lows, right? We're close to, like, this sort of bottom end of where this trend has been, right? It's not like a perfect straight line trend, but we're sort of at the lower end of it. So from that perspective, I think, like, objectively we're cheap. Now, could we go a little bit lower? Sure. But objectively we're cheap. Now, when you have huge separate going up and then you go from 38 to 75, yeah, there's probably some room to come down. Or when you go from 50 to 110, yeah, there's probably some room to come down, right? But, like, we're sort of, like, at that homeostasis / price on the cheaper end type deal. So to me, when I look at this, I'm like, okay, could we go to 80? Could we go to 72? Maybe, but, like, 10% drop, 20% drop, like, okay, whatever. Like, that's really not much. Like, we've already dropped 30% plus. And like I said, order books, when you look at them on spot especially, they're starting to get more bid skewed, right? Especially Binance spot. So to me, like, I think that actually when you start looking at this market, it's actually pretty biased to the upside. Now, like, low time frame, could we go to 85 and hunt that guy and whatever? Sure, but, like, if a gun to my head, I just don't even think we're gonna get below 80. To be honest, it's possible. There are some factors that could push us lower in the short time frame, like tax selling or whatever. But again, I'm just not seeing it. And by the way, if people have questions, people have anything they want me to go over, just post it in the chat. I'm happy to go over, like, whatever. I want to show open interest also. I pulled this up. Let's look at global open interest. Let's look at stablecoin margin open interest. If there was, like, this is aggregate volume. Here we go. If there was a lot of speculative behavior going on here, you would expect, like, global open interest to start to really rise on stablecoin margin. But if you look, like, where we're actually getting the rises, right, like, these three candles are actually when price is starting to come down. So if anything, like, you probably have traders that are actually quite bear biased in this market who are, like, shorting big moves. And you look at things like global open interest, right? Global open interest has not budged. So you could say, like, oh, well, maybe the speculators are sort of going towards altcoins. I don't even think that's the case, right? Like, when we bottomed, global open interest was at 62 billion. It's at 63 billion now. Like, this thing has not budged. And you can tell by looking at almost any altcoin, like, these things are not going up, right? So bottom 28 to 35K in October 2026. I mean, if you're right about that, like, you're a hyper genius. Let's put it that way. I don't think we're going to 28 or 35. Chimp, from your experience, what are the odds they repeat a similar PA such algo from previous corrections? It's a good question. I don't know how likely it is because every correction is a little bit different. I will say when prices are up, people are much more willing to buy dips, and when prices are sort of sitting where they are now, like you definitely have a lot more bear biased traders. So like the what typically happens is the longer the range develops, the more comfortable people get shorting, and then you build a powder keg, and then that powder keg blows, right? So people were like getting used to all these lower highs, right? And then you built it, like eventually the powder keg got so heavy, like boom, like the moment it breaks, it goes up, right? Like in this case too, like you build a powder keg, lower high, lower high, lower high. In fact, like you come up and make a higher high, you sort of retest to the downside, and then like it powder kegs up, right? So you get a lot of these sort of powder kegs. Like you got a big powder keg sort of at 26K back in 2023, where the market just meandered, and then as it started to climb up, like people were just so used to the market, like, oh, it's gonna reject, it's gonna come down. Like, dude, I remember, again, I say this story every fucking time, but I remember people saying like, dude, I remember being on spaces and people telling me they were building like generational swing shorts to 20K here. So, this is the type of shit that you see at these price points. Now, from a time perspective, do I think like, oh, we've printed a bottom? I mean, you could go sideways for longer. I mean, this has been what, like a month, less than a month, right? So it's been like 23 days, whatever. We've had periods where it's been 54 days. And if you really want to like stretch it, we've had periods that's been like, what, 6 months, 8 months? Depends where you want to really draw it. But if I'm being generous, you could say here like 6 months. If you're drawing it a little bit further out, 8 months, right? So I can't tell you whether it's going to be an 8-month period or a 2-month period or, whatever. I could just say like, from an objective perspective of metrics on price, I don't think this is like extremely overvalued Bitcoin. That's what I'm trying to say. Because this looks similar to February, April. Yeah, I mean, the difference between Feb and April a little bit was that like you had some initial volatility, and then it sort of just started sticking around mid to low 80s. Like really, like it didn't trade above 85 for very long, I would say, besides like when Saylor was buying. So like 85, 86, you sort of got suppression pretty quickly. I would say here it's been a little bit slower in terms of like observable price suppression. Like I said earlier, like look at 93K or whatever, that's been sort of suppression, but you haven't had the same level of like giga selling that you did back then. 6-week sell-off during US session and then switch after a local bottom. Yeah, I mean, that's possible, right? You could also get, like I said, some amount of tax selling that could last another few weeks, and then the market sort of just reverses. Yeah, if people have questions, anything you want me to go over, just post it in the chat. I'm happy to go over whatever. And by the way, let me know how you guys like the YouTube live streams versus the Kick live streams, because I'll probably move them over to YouTube. But then like when I'm trying to do like a challenge account or just trade with like basically like anything where I'm doing some sort of challenge account or whatever, like I'll do that on Kick just because I don't want to get banned on here. But that's my plan right now. October to December 2026, peak fear and Saylor forced to sell. So, okay, here's where I think, Christian, you're wrong, because when you look at Saylor's balance sheet, he doesn't need to sell until 2028, if I'm not mistaken. So, I think that Saylor is like not going to be forced. Basically, like what I'm trying to say here is I don't think Saylor is going to be a forced seller anytime soon. Like people are all up in this narrative, like Saylor's going to blow, Saylor's going to blow. Like the way Saylor blows. By the way, it could be that the market goes like sideways and then it goes up, and then at one of these peaks, like Amos was saying, like what if we go to 250 and an 80, right? Like it could be that Sailor sort of has a partial blow up, like on the way down from one of these peaks, sort of like in 2027 or 2028 when his debt is actually callable. Like Sailor's debt at the moment is not callable, which is why the odds of him like having a major blow up is unlikely. Any other questions? Anything else anyone wants me to go over? Yeah, let me know what you guys think about YouTube versus Kick. I'm assuming more people like YouTube. I mean, I'll say this too, like a lot of this market's just like if you really want to like sort of be dialed in, you can sit here and look at the like there's two ways of trading this market, right? There's I'm gonna be dialed in, I'm gonna be watching for really micro stuff. Like I'm telling you sort of what I'm like I notice these sort of patterns where you get these lower highs and like suppression and whatnot. And like, these like there's something that I've been looking for the last few years, which is like levels that you can't trade above or below for very long. Right? So you could sit there and look for those, or you could just zoom out and look at broader metrics and just say like objectively is Bitcoin cheap or expensive here? Technical analysis on SUI BTC. I don't have really much of an opinion on SUI. I know, like, actually, I'll tell you this privately, Amos, but there was one guy, there was a VC who was mega short because he got like a big bag, so he was mega short it and he was like super underwater because he was waiting for his bags to unlock. But this was like a year plus ago. High time frame specifically. Okay. I mean, to me, it looks like it's just coming back into support. It looks like it comes sort of down to these like 1.2, 1.3, like close to 1,000, and then bounces. So wouldn't surprise me if it does something like this. I don't know if it's going to go back to this high. It's possible it does something like this. I think the biggest thing with these coins is also, which I haven't looked at with SUI at all, is looking at how much daily inflation there is. If there's not that much, it's much more likely to have a meaningful move back up. Let me look it up, actually. Look it up somewhere else. SUI daily unlocks. Maybe that's the right one. I should have put it in ChatGPT. After a pump, is it possible to see 49K in 2026 or 2027? Unlikely. I'll tell you how I think it's possible to get to those levels. I think if the Nasdaq, I think this is specifically how I think it would happen. A bunch of people start retiring. A lot of these companies stop hiring. People stop contributing to 401ks. This shit starts to come back down meaningfully. ETFs outflow 20 or 30 billion. Sailor or other treasuries are forced to liquidate. Yeah, if you get that sort of situation that happens, I think that Bitcoin can come back to like 50K. But assuming no broad changes, I think it's basically impossible. But that's pretty bad inflation. Yeah, I don't know what the inflation is. I mean, I'm guessing. Let's see. What's this upcoming unlocks? 43 million SUI. What is it? I don't even know what the daily unlock rate is. Are they unlocking 50 million tokens a week? Is that $100 million a week or some shit? I don't know if that's what it is. If that's what it is, that's pretty bad. But can't really tell. It looks like the inflation slows down. Oh, maybe this is 100 million. Maybe this is every month. Yeah, this is every month. Sorry, it's 50 million tokens a month. So what is that? $2 to $3 million a day? Yeah, I mean, not ideal, I'd say. Are you able to look at other whale traders in Hyperliquid or other exchanges? So I don't have access to it right this. I mean, it's let me phrase this carefully. I have been able to see proprietary data of big whales on other exchanges in the past, and it's actually been pretty useful. I haven't looked at it as much recently. The one reason I like Hyperliquid is because it's very retail dominant. So Although I'm also curious some other things. I should say one other way to use Hyperliquid, by the way, besides the way I'm showing, which is like, you look at Bitcoin, is you look at some of these altcoins. Like you look to see like, okay, are people kind of doing dumb shit on some of these altcoins? Like I like to look at Fartcoin, some dumb shit. I will say like as far as I'm aware, Hyperliquid volume has been falling off a cliff. So it's possible the alpha here sort of decays a little bit. But that's the nature of it, right? Like that's why hype at 60 was like you're pricing like a freaking this asset at like ridiculous valuations because you're pricing it based off of like peak frothy volumes. And now like sort of it's come much more down to reality. Any other questions? Anything else anyone wants me to go over? Yeah, any feedback by the way on the YouTube stuff, I'm more than open to. I don't know how the stream is even going. I'm not like listening back to it, but is it running as smooth as the kick streams, or anyone have any opinions? You hear me typing? I'm just looking up stuff on another monitor. Let's see. Anyone wants me to look at also. Anything you want me to look at? Anything you want me to comment about, or if you have any comments, right? You disagree for some reason or another, like feel free to voice it. I'm happy to go over it. YouTube stream it freezes every 30 seconds or so, but it's okay. Yeah, that might be because my freaking Wi-Fi and shit. Hopefully it's not too egregious. YouTube is better than Kick for showing up on our feed, probably. Yeah, for sure. Also, like, Kick's just not as big. The issue is, like, some things YouTube bans. Like I said, at some point I want to run, like, some sort of challenge account. So, when it gets, like at some point when I do that, that's gonna be on Kick. But in terms of, like, just charting and sharing all this shit, it's probably gonna be on YouTube. See, anything else anyone wants me to go? What are your thoughts on the ISM, aka business cycle, being used to help time a major market cycle top? Yeah, I said, yo, you really need to turn bearish if you want this market to pump. It's gonna be hard to turn me bearish. I don't have any opinions on the ISM business cycle, whatnot. A lot of people have looked at that data in the past and tried to call tops, and they haven't. And I'm just not experienced enough. Where do you believe we are heading now? Sorry, I have to repeat yourself, dude. I really don't mind. Uh, I really don't mind repeating myself. My base case right now is, I think we're sort of closer to fair value or undervalued. Like I think like max downside might be like high 60s, low 70s, but I don't think we're even gonna get there. I My base case is sort of some sort of chop solidation. Maybe it lasts longer because this lasted for so long, right? Maybe we even trend down a little bit, whatever. But I think like roughly speaking, we're at fair prices, and as long as like the stock market doesn't totally implode, like at some point we're gonna catch another win. Like it might be 2 months, it might be 6 months, it might be 10 months, who knows? But I think this is relatively cheap prices. Also, I've been using Hyperscan and Arcam to try and figure out some wallets. Yeah, I mean, if you can get into those. If you can like find wallets that are about to sell or do that type of shit, like that's huge alpha, right? So I can tell you actually that there's one guy, I'm not going to say who it is on Twitter, who does this professionally, and like that's how they make a lot of their money. Is it truth you've been bullish since one? It's the truth, sir. You've been bullish since 110. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is I was bearish at that range for so long, but I got bullish at 110. I caught the long to 125, and then yeah, I mean, there's some personal shit I was dealing with. People close to me know what I was dealing with, so I'm still dealing with it actually, which is why I'm not really doing as much trading right now. But at some point I will be like slamming much more margin on personal. Black Monday tomorrow, by the way. Yeah, it's possible. Bearish 100 to 120, then bullish 100 to 90. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't bearish at 100. I was bearish more like 110, but yeah. Anything else anyone wants me to go over? Or anything else? Yeah, I mean, by the way, people can shit talk in the chat as much as they want. I really don't care. Yes, I follow like 2 to 3 accounts that go into Hyperliquid to do a trade, and after they retrieve it to Binance. It would not surprise me if Binance has an internal desk trading on Hyperliquid, by the way. I can tell you with very high confidence that they were doing that on BitMEX. Any other questions or any other comments or any other concerns? By the way, if you guys are on YouTube but aren't subscribed, a subscription would be much appreciated. Also, turning the notifications on because I'm going to try to do more YouTube streams. So remember bullish going into 126 when we are at 109 and said after the pump we actually go a lot lower than 100 or 90. Fine. You know, I probably would have been more tuned in and trading better, but dude, I'm still dealing with shit. I don't know when I'm gonna be like slamming size again, just cause yeah, it's been like a crazy fucking last two plus, yeah, it's been 2 months now. Yeah, you actually have been doing good, brother. Well, we'll see what the market does. That's for sure. Hello from Brazil. Would Japan hikes affect crypto? I don't really think so. Great job. I'll definitely stay tuned for the analysis. I think in the future, instead of like publishing YouTube videos, I'm just gonna do a live stream, just because I can publish a video, which the videos would be more succinct, but this way I get to actually interact with people. What's your low target for Bitcoin and highest maximum higher number target for Bitcoin when Trump gets his new dovish Fed chairman implanted? Okay, good question. I'm gonna put a caveat, which is the stock market doesn't implode to zero. So that's the caveat. That's the base case that we're working with. Okay, assuming the stock market does not go straight to zero, where do I think Bitcoin could go? On the lower end, I'd say high 60s. Sort of a retest of the upper end of this range. On the higher end, at some point we go back up to this demand zone or maybe even higher. I don't know whether we're going to go to like 200 off the bat. It's possible if there's some sort of crazy USD devaluation. So I guess that'd be my caveat the other way, right? If there's some sort of crazy like inflation, USD devaluation, like you could just get a blowout to like mid under 50s or high 100Ks. But yeah, What's your low? Okay. Last four hikes, BOJ dumped 20-25% after hikes. Look, I wouldn't. The biggest issue with like looking at that type of stuff is it's hard to say what's correlation and what's causation. So like, okay, the Bank of Japan hikes or the Bank of Japan does some shit, right? Like, is that directly related to that, or is that just like the market was frothy and it was going to dump anyways? Like, sample size matters, I guess, in these cases is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I mean, like Bitcoin right now is just bleeding out, right? I mean, it's probably a fair assumption to think that we're gonna go and hunt all these like liquidations on the lick map, right? You just have a shitload of these guys. Possible we just go and hunt a pocket of these. I will say you're starting to see some element of like retail starting to short this shit. And also, as I mentioned when I went over order books a while ago, if I can find it, you're starting to get some sort of air pocket above. So it would not shock me if this thing like V reverses at some point either. So just don't like I would not short this basically is what I'm trying to say. I just don't think this makes any sense to short. You could have shorted here if you wanted, no. But I think if you're short, like you probably just cover here. I think you should be playing shorts very strategically. You play shorts when you see shit like this, right? Okay, we're rejecting, we're rejecting, we're rejecting. Okay, like maybe you take a short somewhere here, you put a stop like here or even here, right? Like, but this at this point, I don't think playing the short side is the most like logical. I think a lot of people wanted to bounce to get out. Yeah, I mean, like that's a great point, right? Like that's why it could just meander, right? You could get people who are tax selling or people who sort of get pushed out, and so the market sort of just meanders. It dumps into people's bids. Like I showed at the order books, you have a ton of bids as you get closer and closer to 80, which is basically telling you like, hey, these spot guys want to buy, but they're not like aggressively buying, right? So that could easily happen, and that wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. Any other questions or comments? I think I accidentally did I switch tabs? All right, let me go back to the stream tab. I think I accidentally changed. Like you said, we can dump lower to pump higher. In my opinion, based on the lick maps. Yeah, exactly. Like wouldn't be too shocking. Again, like we did spend like I'm talking low time frame. And again, if you're like holding and you don't give a shit about low time frame, which most of you, I would recommend you be in that boat rather than trading the low time frame crap. Like yeah, we've been here 11, 12 days. Maybe we've sort of cleared the local demand and maybe we sort of bleed back down and maybe we just sort of range here. I mean, this is not like end of the world type stuff in my opinion. Like, oh my god, Bitcoin's ranging or whatever. Like, nothing too crazy to worry about. Have you been in Brazil? Do I think Bitcoin will improve economies in the third world countries? I have not been to Brazil and I don't have an opinion on that. I do think holding fiat currencies will screw you, right? So, from that perspective, like, own Bitcoin, own Ethereum, own silver, own gold, own something that's like these governments can't print because over a long enough time period they're gonna print, right? And like the more third world the country, the more they're probably gonna do crazy shit. It's law at this point. The shilling has been crazy from September to November. The shilling for what, Christian? Like buying Bitcoin, or you mean like what aspect of the shilling? Sorry. I will say, like, you did have a lot of like these Bitcoin people, dude. Okay, the one tweet I can't pull it up, but if you go to David Bailey's Twitter, like I always if you look at this tweet and I think like this guy's like a freaking. This is like let's see. Um, I will say this is like in my opinion like the peak of hubris. Let me see if I can pull it up on another window. See if I can pull it up and bring it here. I do this. Oh, mine had. Oh, freaking. Oh my god. Alrighty. I don't know if I'm signed into Twitter on this browser. So I will say, if you ever want to see like what does hubris look like, look at this. This guy literally like almost top ticked Bitcoin. Ever since getting into Bitcoin, I've had this dream of buying $1 billion of Bitcoin in a single bit. Tomorrow, I'm smash buying. Tomorrow that dream comes true. Like this shit should be framed. You know, this is the type of tweet that should be framed because it's so like peak hubris. Like this is one of the reasons I was bearish at the time. I was like, dude, I'm seeing shit like this. Like this is like classic top signal type stuff, right? And now his shareholders are obviously all like wanting his head. Conley seems to think ETH can eventually flip Bitcoin. I mean, it's definitely not out of the question, right? Like in a perfect storm, it's not. I would say it's not out of the question. Mainstream and all this crypto stuff from the Trump team. Look, Trump. I will say this about Trump: he has been so bad for crypto. Like his family is extracting so much money out of crypto. That's the one thing. Like I will say, when you get these situations where price is like at these elevated levels, right? Like we had here, that's the issue, right? Like you get these parasites like the Trumps that are like max extractionary out of this market. And sorry, what am I doing? Not there, dude. I don't know what I was highlighting there. Sorry. When you get these extended periods of tops, like that's when you get the max extractionary shit coming from like people like the Trumps, right? So, um, look, be careful. You don't have to buy every snake oil like this guy has to sell to you. So I'm trying to tell you. Like, dude, honestly, anything Trump chills. Like, you know what the number one example of this is? His own freaking token. Like every time this thing tries to remotely pump. By the way, this is a great top signal. Whenever you see Trump or Melania pump, that's a freaking great top signal. Like, look at this shit. Like, it's clear as day. Like his family's just unlocking the token, and every month they're just selling it, right? Like, nothing fancy, nothing special. Like, just classic like extractionary behavior, and it is what it is, right? But that's what's going on. Anything else anyone wants me to go over? All right, guys. I think I'm gonna call it a wrap. Okay, how did you learn to trade? Do you have a teacher? How different is it now from 2018? All right, this will be the last question I answer, and then we'll call it a wrap. 2018, yes, very different. Teacher, just put in a shitload of hours and try to like get as much information and try to see what data is actually like legitimate versus bullshit. That's what I would say. Happy to is Zizo Linko. If you show up to the next stream, I'm happy to go more into that and really talk deeply about it. So if you show up and you ask that question next stream, happy to do so. Uh, Zcash analysis, I'll do that as well next stream as well. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna call it a wrap. And until next time, take care, guys. Thank you again for coming in, and it was a bit longer than I anticipated, but hopefully it was good. So, thanks, guys, and until next time.